Hey
Hey
everyone,
everyone,
welcome to
episode
episode
10
10 of
of
Revenue
Revenue
Talent
Talent
Talk.
Talk.
Not
Not
only
only
today are
today
we
are we
live
live
and in
in
person, but we are
we are
doing it in
doing
our studio for the first
for the
time.
first
So if anything goes wrong and
anything
no one
goes
hears
wrong
us, we
and
apologize ahead of time.
apologize ahead of time.
Today
Today I
I have the
I have
pleasure
the
of sitting
pleasure of
with two
sitting with
co-founders of
co-founders of
Delegate,
Delegate,
Robert Sir
Robert
and
Sir
Patrick
and Patrick
Hudgins.
Hudgins.
Robert,
Robert,
Patrick,
Patrick,
first off, thank you for
thank
coming
you
to New
for
York. Thanks for this. I really appreciate it.
Hey, episode 10 is a big deal. How to be here.
Yep, double digits.
Privilege.
We
Let's
made
go.
James probably in the background saying it's episode 11.
So how about you guys start off and give us a little high overview of what Delegate is and yourself?
I think you should go.
All right, happy to go. So, Delegate provides fractional Salesforce and business systems administration. We do this for companies that purchase Salesforce, they purchase CRM and ancillary software to make it work, to make their customer experience wonderful, to make their reps more productive, their sales reps more productive, and to make better decisions with better data. And we help them administer those tools.
Awesome.
And I'm
being
told we
have
have a little bit of
echo, so we
try not to
yell.
yell.
Maybe I won't like project towards you. Just a little bit better. There we go.
And Robert, tell us about yourself, man.
Man, one of the co-founders of Delegate, have spent my entire career in B2B SaaS, seeing the ups and downs of it all. Background is engineering and product, actually. Studied computer science and been in the Salesforce ecosystem by accident, like most of us have. Found my way into starting this company because of the problem we found in terms of sales and marketing teams not being able to manage their technology. And here we are. Now I'm on a podcast with you.
All right, I have a quick question. Saying we really let echo in this plug and play podcast. We have two options. We can go not live, and then we can just record it. We have 45 minutes, right? Go for it. Or we can through an echo that's not sounding good. Sounds really bad.
Oh, great. Okay, cool.
But I think that was before Robert spoke. So
Okay, cool. I can go to another room.
So can we pause and go to another room, Jay? I think I fixed it. All right. He said he fixed it.
How does it sound, Jay? Do I still have an echo?
Jay, for the tens and thousands of people who are listening right now, do we have an echo? I don't think we do. Okay.
Good.
It's fixed.
Great.
Just do it live.
No, but now we can't hear them.
I'd like to thank Nomad Works for their plug and play podcasting studio for all your podcasting needs. Please.
And now he says we're good. So let's go. Patrick, let's roll with it. Tell us about yourself.
Great. Yeah. My background is in sales and sales leadership for tech companies, little tiny rocket ships who took a bunch of rocket fuel and tried to make it to the moon. And some of them exploded along the way, and some of them actually made it to into orbit. And so that's what we do is, and so my background was in sales leadership for those companies as an individual contributor and as a sales leader. And so I see a lot of really common themes in these companies. I see a lot of really common problems in these companies, and we leverage my experience and Rob's experience in working with our clients.
Okay. So, at Captivate Talent, obviously we're a recruiting company, and part of the reason we do this is to help people that are on a journey on their own, maybe hearing this and reflecting. So I want to hear like the origin story, because I met you guys, and if you weren't wearing the same t-shirt at the same conference, you would have not struck me as co-founders that work each other, because you both have very different personalities, in my opinion. So how'd you meet each other, and how'd you say like we should do this together?
I guess I could start. I was doing some product stuff at a company called TalkDesk. I don't even know what year was this, 2016, 2017, maybe. This was kind of the peak of San Francisco startup SaaS life. And on paper, I had a pretty good gig, but inside, it was tough. I don't know about Pat, you lived in city, but I was commuting in and out of the city. I was trying to figure out how am I ever going to get a house here? The job that I had was a good opportunity, but obviously it wasn't kind of fulfilling all the check boxes in terms of feeling like I had the diversity of experiences that I needed. Couple that with a lot of the customers that we had at TalkDesk that clearly struggled to manage their tools. We had a lot of customers that would complain about features that we had built, but when we looked under the hood, it was because a lot of their systems, such as Salesforce, were completely out of whack. And so kind of coupling those two things together, understanding that there has to be a different way to build my career and kind of spend my time and my work-life balance with the problem that I saw. And we came up with this idea of kind of Salesforce on demand, Salesforce admin on demand. Pat and I ended up, we worked at TalkDesk together and kind of brought him in to say, like, we talked about this and I don't know how to sell anything. I'm the product guy. I'm the tech guy. And so understanding Pat being a strong sales leader at TalkDesk as well, kind of just started talking about it and it took off from there. It wasn't roses in the beginning.
Did you two know each other before TalkDesk, or is that where you met?
No, we met at TalkDesk.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
in terms of our differences, for sure. I mean, we had the product and sales thing at any SaaS company, right? It's like, where are these features coming out? And I would respond with, don't worry about it. Just go sell.
And he's like, I just sold one of them.
So, the argument is, are you going to commit to any deadlines at all in delivering that new product or features or functionality or making something not break? And his response is, why can't you just sell what's on the truck? Which is both are valid arguments, I think.
But what Pat is coming to learn in terms of the beauty of what we've done is obviously learn each other's world a lot. And what Pat's starting to realize now is like, I had to protect the engineers, like, cause I can't do anything without them. Right. So it's been a really interesting ride learning, our journeys that were actually really similar on paper, but obviously, from a very, very different side of the house. So that's been really cool to learn about while we've been building this.
Yeah. So let me ask you. So you both were working at the time, and Pat, I know you had another job. You worked at Paycor, I think, afterwards. Was that when Delegate was kind of forming, and you were doing a little bit of like feet in both?
Yeah. Good call out there. So, when you bootstrap a company, you don't go from zero to being able to support a family.
Yeah.
Before, the day you start the company. So, I had another job, and then nights and weekends would work on Delegate with Rob. And that got us through a period where the problem was very clear.
Yep.
So every company I've ever worked at is poor at managing their internal CRM and all the systems that their sales, marketing, and customer success team uses. Everyone's bad, with like very few exceptions. You know who you are. Dom Pelusi, hello, you're doing great. Some people have done it and have made an art out of it. So the problem was very clear that most companies don't accomplish this very well. How we were going to solve it and our approach to solving it, how we were going to price it, how we could build a company actually solving that problem rather than just a few smart people, that took probably 2 years in the desert to figure out what was the right approach.
And I just bought a house, which buying a house in the Bay Area, obviously I'm very privileged and lucky to have done that, but that cleared me out. I didn't really have
no cash reserves.
No, it cleared me out, man. So, it was we had to straddle the line a little bit. I ended up making a pit stop at Salesforce. It was kind of a need to build up some cash, but also kind of scratching an itch to see what it's about. I probably left Salesforce a little earlier than I should have, but I had conviction in what we were doing, and it just felt like trying to toe the line and do a little bit both. There wasn't a seminal, I think, moment or like a deal we signed or a customer we signed. It just felt like it was time. And so we just, I don't know, it was short lived, but we ended up going full time on a year in, maybe something like that.
Yeah. Well, you went full time a year, and I went full time about a year and a half in. But it was once we hired our first full-time employee aside from us, the questions came of like, wait a minute, so you're not
wait, you're not all in, but I am.
I am.
Yeah, that's right. We had a full-time employee before we were full-time, which was interesting.
So when he asked that question, I quit that day or that week, and I drove down to LA, and I was preparing my speech to him of like why this was a great idea and why he was going to be very successful here. And you took him out to sushi on the beach in Hermosa Beach, and he was all in. So and then we went from there.
I good. I was happy you didn't say he quit that night or something like that. I was waiting for. Pat J says you have to pull the mic closer when you talk and command the room.
I'm very happy to.
So let me ask you something. So in this journey, as you guys were going through these, rather large companies, I mean, TalkDesk is a pretty decent size startup, and then Salesforce, obviously a giant, and Paycor, right? Big name now. And when did you decide like you had that gene to be an entrepreneur? Like, and just like, oh, I'm going to found a company like that. That is a hard pivot. It's not like you had this like scrappy startup, bunch of seed stage companies, and then you're like, I'm going to do this on my own. You made a pretty big jump.
I have kind of a dark answer.
Okay.
Which is, what else are you going to do?
Yeah.
I think when you look at the options for your own retirement or purchasing a house, especially in like New York or San Francisco or any major metro, and raising a family, having those types of aspirations, in a world where remote work wasn't as prevalent as it is today, or what do you want to do with your career? Do you want to be part of a larger machine? Do you like these smaller? I love startups. I love the creative process of getting to be part of them. I don't love the little explosions that happen on the way, and some of them don't all make it. But like, if finding product market fit, building something, some version of some V1 of a sales process or a marketing process or a customer success process, there's just such like beautiful creative authorship in that, and so much learning that has to happen for that to get done. I like that process, and I always wanted to do that. And in living in a world, a big company world, where there's more security, which is great, but there's also there's more bosses, then there's more bureaucracy that you have to work within, and you don't have as much creative freedom. So I think that was for me. I'll Rob talk.
Yeah, I mean, there's a price to that stability, right? And it's really ownership of your time. For me, I think for anyone that's managed me, and Pat actually, I don't like being told what to do.
I had this conversation last night with my partner.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's my answer is actually interesting. I think I got into this for one reason, and I've fallen in love with it for a different reason, right? And so I think I've gotten into it just because I've always had a weird thing with time, and more than wealth or money, for me, it's like I just want all my own time. But over the course of the experience, I've actually fallen in love with the fight, with the struggle, right? With the pressure. Like, it's a privilege to have this pressure. It's I get up every day and we deal with different problems. We deal with high stakes problems. And, it's been an interesting kind of journey to see, where that started from and kind of where it is now. But yeah, I just wanted all my own time. That's really what it came down to.
Add something real quick onto that, is that I feel like entrepreneurship is such like it's a journey of like self-expression, and you learn a lot about who you are, what your weak points are, what your strong points are.
Absolutely.
And I think, once Rob and I really started to grow the business and get meaningful customers and like customer headcount, and we had to grow, like we looked at each other one day and went, holy moly, like we're married. Looking at looking at the trajectory of where this business is heading and the success, and like now we have employees, we have like you mentioned that we look like an odd couple for some reason, but we did have to have a sit down and be, okay, so what do you like to do for fun? I think it was very much like the business came first, and then
I'm going to be spending a lot more time with you, apparently. Should we collectively as a group apologize to anyone that ever managed us in the past? I feel like I've had that.
I'm sorry.
Yes, I am also sorry. So you both just talked about your journey a little bit and how you kind of came into it for some reasons. If you can go back and look at that person before you drew the logo on the paper or whatever came first, had the idea and put pen to paper, and give them like some advice or some skills that you didn't think you would need and have developed over the last couple of years on this journey. What are some skills that, like, somebody listening right now, like, hey, this is what you need to look up on and get and study up on right away out of the gate?
I'll say it's two things. Just start selling. That's just start selling. You're not obviously early on, you're going to take your lumps. I think, based on my background, I over optimized for, the cadence of the business, the operating system for the business, the processes for the business. None of that matters, right? Like you got to start selling, you got to start getting feedback, you got to start gaining momentum. The second part I would say is just really, really take the time to figure out who you are, what you're grounded in. And even if you already are, just double check that. Because this experience and this journey and most of what our job is just kind of regulating our emotional sometimes, and so much of, I guess in the position that we're in, our emotions have such a big impact on the business. It's so easy to project our stuff onto the business just because of the seat that we're in. So, being grounded and make sure you're firm in who you are is incredibly important. Not only to start off, but obviously as you continue to go. So those are my two.
Yeah, the founder of Von Church, they're a recruiting firm. You may be familiar with them. The founder of Von Church told me one time, he said, he's like, entrepreneurship is easy. You just find something that people are willing to pay money for, and then you just keep doing that thing again, which is very, it's like dead simple. And that's why it like really clicked with me of like, oh, just find something people are willing to pay money for, and then just keep doing that thing, So that was one thing that like resonated with me. The other thing that's I'm finding more and more as we grow, especially, is that my job is to learn. It's to learn from my customers. It's to learn from my employees. It's to aggregate information. It's very and then eventually decide and set a vision for the business. But most of my job is learning how to get good at something else. It's like if you built a business because you're good at sales or service or whatever you're good at, and you're good enough at it to build a business on it, congratulations, you're going to have to go learn something else, accounting, financial strategy, how to customer service support, ops. You'll have to go get good at something else. The reward for good work is more work.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I've gotten better at in the last few years, especially, is like learning. It's like kind of like running in place, or not running in place. It's like working out while you're, while you're resting between workouts. You just have to get good at learning in real time.
I hope we have that as a soundbite. The reward for work is more work for all you aspiring entrepreneurs out there.
I think I've done every job at Delegate at this point, at some point.
So let me ask you that. So I'm a solo founder, and you two are co-founders. And I think I have a really close friend who has two co-founders. Actually, we go back and forth all the time on which one of us chose the better path. And there's days where we're both looking to jump because of the choices that we made. So like, what's kind of some advice you'd give someone there about how you find that partner and how you work with them?
Ooh, we're still working on that every day, my friend, every day. It's not easy, for sure. I mean, it takes a lot of work. But for me, I think the reason why Patrick and I work really well is because we have similar values. And you talk about just, life partners in general. Obviously you're a life partner now, just FYI. No, but it's really important because, there might be differences in how we want to, tackle a specific problem. There might be differences in how we view a problem, how we communicate. But at the end of the day, like, I have to trust that his intentions are right? Like, I have to trust that. I can't, it's impossible. It is impossible to build a business with someone where you're questioning their intentions. And as many disagreements that Pat and I have had, I've never questioned his intentions. And I think that is something that has made it so it creates the space and the solid foundation and the grounding for us to be able to work through the inevitable differences that come up.
It's like goal setting and making sure you have those same objectives. So like, everyone's trying to get to the same place.
Yeah, I'd align on that. I think, like, when you look at a partner for marriage, like, do you want somebody who's completely opposite to you, or who's like ideally like you're too similar? And I've seen like both couples work in practice, where you get like somebody who's like, somebody who wakes up early and somebody who goes to bed late, and they get married. Somebody he's an easy sleeper and somebody who's not. Somebody who's like quick to anger and somebody who's patient, somebody who's outgoing and somebody who's introverted. And I think aside, like the aligned values are obviously the foundation of that, but you don't want somebody who's too alike to you, because then it's like what are you giving to the business if you're giving both the same
superpower?
You have the same superpower, right?
So that's actually more about alignment. Like, do you guys have your own lanes internally from a structure standpoint? Like, and you stay in, like, maybe you have some cross function, but like you stay in your lanes, like that's your part of the business to manage. Like, you're the number one call on that.
Yeah. So we do have that. And then those, I mean, it's like those change based on what the size of the business and the problems within the business. As new problems come up, it's kind of like kinks in a hose. It feels like, where like as soon as you fix one kink, the pressure builds up and there's another kink in the hose, for example, and it's just a series of, like, everything breaks in this chain and you just go around fixing all the breaks. And then because it's a stress, it breaks because of stress. And so there are some parts of the business that he takes and some parts of the business that I take, but we have to shift because of those pressure breaks.
Patrick, last time I saw you, you talked to me about, like, we had a conversation about, you asked me who holds me accountable and what's my external accountability and stuff like that. So what do you recommend? How do you hold each other accountable? Like, if you see the other ones, like, wow, maybe you said it was good. It stuck with me quite a bit. Like,
hey, I'll be honest here. I'll be real here. We last time we saw you, we were in New York. Pat and I were working out of San Francisco for the past, I don't know, since the company's inception. I just moved to New York City. Pat also moved away from the city. So we're not operating in the same space anymore. And so this has been the first time where we've kind of operated the company at a distance. And I remember we went out for drinks. We'd spent a week here, but we hadn't actually talked because we were so busy with all the different events. But Pat sat me down and was like, "Hey, Rob, I can't hold you accountable. I don't, like, you make it hard for me to hold you accountable." And it was a real conversation about, how we need to get better there. It's not easy. We don't have, again, we don't have institutional VCs. We're bootstrapped. All we have is each other to keep each other accountable. So, to answer your question, we work on it. We work on all the time. Like, I've delivered probably feedback to Pat that has not been appropriate and correct, and I'm working on it, and so it's hard, but you got to find ways to communicate. I've been working on my delivery a lot recently.
Yeah.
I could be harsh. But look, the commitment of just always trying to, you got to be able to talk to each other. You got to be able to, show that you're willing to make that work. So I just wanted to put that out there because it's real. It's a hard thing. It's a very hard thing.
Yeah, one of the things that companies who take institutional investment benefit from, and whether they know it or not, is they have a board that's holding them accountable and holding their feet to the fire, and there are serious repercussions for mismanagement of the business, and that drives them to be better stewards of capital and grow fantastic.
In theory, or so we hope.
In theory, right? In theory, right? And there's some founders that's not the case for, and there's some founders that's absolutely the case for. And so, in a world where you don't have significant external institutional investors, you have to decide, okay, what are we building here? And you have to hold each other accountable. You have to hold yourself accountable because you're a solo founder, and just say, okay, what am I building? What am I actually aiming to do? Because if it's a goal and I'm serious about this goal, then I have to hold myself accountable. If I'm lying to myself, but like, if you're just one person, I think what I would worry about is lying to myself.
Yeah.
About like what it is I actually want to do versus building a lifestyle business. And he and I get to, like, call each other out. Mostly it happens in private, but it's, that's the accountability, is like, you said we're doing this. That is your word to yourself. And go ahead.
No, sorry. And I was also going to say, what also helps is, like, hire really strong VPs trust.
Yeah.
They will also hold you accountable. And that's been really, really helpful for us. We have an amazing executive team. So that's also been really helpful.
So yes. I do want to kind of spin into employees, because you did say something talking about accountability. You hired that first employee, and then all of a sudden it was like the game changed. And for me too, I mean, before my first year or half a year in the business when I started. It was just me. So I was like in Costa Rica in December, like hanging out by volcanoes and surfing on the beach. Then all of a sudden I had an employee and I was like, woke up in the morning, like, ooh, different ball game. Like just one, like if you are not fiercely loyal to that person, that's honestly, your life is in their hand. Like they are relying on you to run a business effectively. Like you shouldn't be in the game then. I think that's my opinion.
In reality, in the realist sense, I and Rob work for our employees and our customers, and whatever story we tell them during the sales process or during the hiring process, that is what we owe them, and we owe them every day. So that's a big part of it.
So something that when I was doing my research, and I heard you guys speak on, it was about how you compensate and reward employees that normally wouldn't have like extra compensation and reward. So like it's how do you pay somebody in an operation role, like a salesperson almost, like how do you incentivize your other parts of the business? So I'm assuming that like goes into product, that might go into engineering, like finance, ops. Can you talk a little bit about that and share about that? Because I thought it was eye-opening.
Yeah, one thing I will say, what I've learned, I used to, when we first getting started, the sales process was Pat and Rob's show, and so I learned a lot about sales. I learned a lot about the kind of pressures of building a sales career, right? Like your money's not guaranteed. Like you have to go in every day and trying to make your bread. And I'll be honest, product managers, engineers, our life is really cush compared to that. If I were to ever be in a position to, lead a product team in a B2B SaaS company, they're all going to be comped based on revenue somehow. It's a completely different world. And I didn't truly understand that. And the power of aligned incentives until, this delegate thing. And so, what we've tried to do, obviously in services, typically the measure and the metric is hours, right? More hours you bill, more money everybody makes. Your client kind of loses out on that, right? And so without getting into too much detail, we've tried to align the incentives of the fractional employees and resources that we provide with our clients, right? And so with our clients, they're trying to drive outcomes as quickly as possible. It's not about hours or complexity. And so we want to, we've created an incentive structure for our fractional resources to do the same, right? If you deliver something faster, yes, theoretically we build less hours, quote unquote, but you've made the customer more successful. And that's what our alignment or our incentive structure is actually based on.
All your fractional resources have an incentive structure.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think in a world where everybody's in the same office, you can build a management structure, a middle management structure that's really like focused on driving deliverables or focused on like that's able to police and drive your hourly labor. In a world where you're remote, middle managers just lost a whole lot of power. I'll tell you that much through the growth of remote work. So what I believe and what Rob and I have built this company around is that incentives drive behavior. Incentives, even when you're remote. When I can't see you, I can only assume that you're doing the best thing for you, right? Like that's the incentives I can drive. And so we build our compensation plans around aligned incentives that are the right thing for the business and the right thing for our individual contributors. And some of them really max those out. Like, there are definitely employees that make definitely more than Rob and I on the services function, not just the sales function. Yeah. And they're very happy. And this is how you retain good talent. And if I'm in the business, if I'm in a services business, what I'm saying is I can find and retain better talent than you can hire specifically internally, or I can do so at a cost advantage.
Yeah. How do you, in terms of now shifting into two opposite sides of the country, has your whole cadence with each other changed? Has your cadence now with your employees changed? If your schedule shifted, like is Rob not getting on meetings until 12 o'clock and like doing like yoga at 11 o'clock in the morning, or Patrick, or are you up at 6:30 like on calls with him? Like has that shifted? Because we talk to a lot of international clients and we actually advise that they don't go to the West Coast because of how much schedules could shift. So I'm curious to just how you guys now being bi-coastal, that's affected you.
See, from my perspective, I guess we'll see. I think we need to definitely be more intentional about it. You know, it used to just be like, hey, let's go take a walk or let's go grab lunch. We definitely have to be more intentional about it and make time for it. You know, we're busier both individually in terms of our personal lives, but also just you know, just in terms of our responsibilities for the business. You know, our company's growing, right? So we're spreading ourselves a little bit, but we just got to make time for it. I think from my perspective, I like being on the East Coast a little better. I'm a night owl. So I get my mornings to kind of, you know, do what I need to do. But yeah, I don't know. I get from my perspective, yet to be seen, but I know that we have to be more intentional about staying aligned. And I think it was tough maybe the first few weeks. We've gotten a little bit better the past couple weeks and just staying aligned. It's easier to harbor feedback. It's easier to harbor maybe you know, disagreements or even resentment, if you will, right? When you're not together, it's easy to create the own narrative of what's going on in your head because you're not with each other. And so you know, just continuing to understand that part of our job is to have difficult conversations, to be proactive about staying aligned at all times, and understanding it takes more effort. So that's my initial thoughts on it. And we'll see how it continues to go.
Are you guys afraid with you know, you are a fully remote company, right? Everyone's distributed, and you will continue to always be a fully remote company, right?
We've got some SDRs in an office in Austin.
Okay, so you have SDRs in an office in Austin. So my question was going to be around that more junior employee. Obviously, like the two of you said, harbor resentment. So if like a junior employee, you know, maybe they don't have that same relationship, they don't have that same life experience. If they get a negative in the workplace, and it could be losing a deal, a boss that's mad at them about something like that, like it's one of the big negatives I see for remote work personally, is that person will just sit there in their house. They might be alone, they might have a roommate or a partner that's not around, and they're just hanging out on that, versus like, hey, let's just go take a walk. It seems like you didn't take that well. Like, is that scary for you?
It's scary, yeah. I mean, I think that's also one of the things, the founders being the executive team being remote. What you're saying is we're going to make this work in a world where like the execs are all in the same area, but everybody else is remote. Is that really a remote company? Do you really feel like everybody's has their say, or has a say in the business, or is able to be heard? But when everybody's remote, and that's your only mode of communication is building a structure or a cadence of communication, or Zoom or calls or whatever, or travel, whatever the thing is. You're fully dedicated. You've burned the boats essentially around you know, for on-site work. And so you need to find ways to make it work. I think when it comes to the one piece that's difficult is that if you are early in your career, remote work is not for you. It's not for you. The reason being is because there's so much you're learning from somebody who's been there longer, or has more years of tenure in the professional sphere, who just is like, you know what, I have like 5 minutes. Let me explain something to you. Or I have 10 minutes. Let me show you how to do something. You actually, that accumulates over time and helps you gain advantage because you have a unique knowledge in a space. And if you're a remote employee, and especially a junior one, you don't have as many opportunities to get that, let's call it like grace of someone more senior, to have these opportunities for candid feedback. And when you hear two people who are senior, let's say, discussing something really like important, and they're including you in a conversation because it's like, yeah, you're already here, you might as well listen to it. Well, if we're in a Zoom call, I might have just called, you know, Chris directly, and that junior employee might not have gotten the benefit of hearing our argument.
And candidly, might not have been able to add a new perspective to maybe that conversation that those two people that have been looking at the same problem for 10 years are looking at.
That's true.
Yeah, I have you know, I've been pretty independent, I would say, on like whether things go remote or not, and tried to like stay out of the fight. But I'm starting to see not only like the learning, but the connections that people aren't getting with each other. And like, you know, it's more challenging to make these business connections with somebody you might have worked with briefly, but you spent 40 hours a week with them for, you know, 6 months in person. Like, that's an accelerated relationship.
I got to meet through Pavilion. I got to meet the founder of HubSpot, and I was talking to him, or I asked him a question around, do you think HubSpot could have been built as a remote business? And his answer was, I don't think I would have had a choice, because like we're largely remote today. I mean, there's a couple days in the office, a couple days outside the office. People are coming and going. A lot of people distribute around the country. He's like, I don't think I would have a choice. I think what we would have done is probably done a week on site once a quarter for everybody and just done no office, but everybody comes on for a week. We can do all of the goodwill building, build the relationships in an intense manner, and then everybody can go back. And so you don't save on the office costs. They just get translated to
that on-site usually, and you have a couple days a quarter in the office and meals and all that, same price.
I think what also helps too is even if you're not at a point where I mean, getting all your employees together pretty often it's pretty expensive. It's a cost. We encourage our employees to join professional groups in their geo, right? So even if they don't get the in-person contact with the company, they get it with their peers. So we have some folks that have like Salesforce Saturdays in that part of the country. We have like Salesforce meetups that people host. We have another who's part of the Salesforce military group, and we have people enrolled in Pavilion, for example. And even myself, like we have a couple people here, but just having a network of professionals that you can be in person with, and kind of encouraging that, it really does help fill that void that you were talking about, Chris. So we do encourage our employees to do that, and I think it's helped.
That's tough. And you guys like the event circuit a bit too, right? I mean, that's why we're here today.
We're extroverts. Yeah.
Well, I think we're this year going into 2023, we're using these Salesforce World Tour events or this Pavilion conference, or we're using these conferences as opportunities to invest in like the people that are local to those conferences, those employees that are local. Let's bring them to that one. Let's bring some clients that are going to be at that conference. Let's take them to dinner. Let's have an opportunity to build relationships over breaking bread. And we hit the conference. And so it's an opportunity for us to say like, all right, so we've met with our internal team. We met with clients. We went to this conference and got a little bit more educated in the market. And we've accomplished that all in a 3-day span. That's a great investment in my mind. And so if we can do that, we're doing that probably every 6 weeks, probably looking at 2023.
And let's be honest. I mean, coming from a service business too, like there's a sense that, there are a lot of competitors in any service business, and people buy from people that they know, they trust, and they like. So like, if you're not getting FaceTime in, someone else is.
100%.
So wanted to just give some practical advice out there. So if somebody, back to that entrepreneur out there that's ready to make the move and maybe make a jump in their career, if they're thinking about a co-founder, what's one thing that you have to do before you bring on a co-founder?
Oh, man.
Aside from find a good counselor.
Yeah. No, look, at the end of the day, it's a commitment. And once you bring someone else on, like the stakes have gone up. So really be sure with yourself in terms of, is this what I want to do? Right? Am I committed to this? Is this something that I'm willing to, go for, because once you start bringing someone else in, that's a responsibility. And you owe it to that person to be as locked in as you want them to be. Right. And so that for me is important. I've seen, some instances where I've been kind of recruited to be a co-founder or whatever you have. And you can kind of just tell, it's like, all right, you want me to be all in on this, but I don't see that level of, you could see that the conviction on their side is a little bit more conditional, and so that's really, really important.
I think if you're going to if you've got an idea and you've got a business somewhat off the ground, you should first do an assessment for what are you good at. And that sometimes is, or what are you bringing to the table? That sometimes is a hard conversation to look in the mirror and tell and have with yourself. Because what would I need this person to bring to the table as well? Because you're going to have questions on equity, you're going to have questions on compensation, you're going to have questions on roles and responsibilities, and you should know what you're bringing to the table and what you're looking for them to bring to the table in advance of that conversation.
I wanted to make sure we had any questions, but it says the reward for good work is more work. Love that. So that's your soundbite, man. I hope you like that being out there.
Great.
In terms of when you're working together and you're transitioning and finding all these new skills that you need, you mentioned some resources already that I know you guys are pretty involved with from knowing you, but where should somebody go to upskill themselves, and how should they do that? Like, where do you think the best place to seek knowledge and learn is in this remote environment?
My two are honestly just read a lot, ask people what they're reading. Reading has been tremendous for me. And then just have conversations. I've taken some more tactical, I think, courses, which are, I think you found really helpful. For me personally, like the high level of understanding kind of models and frameworks are important to me. So I would say, use your network. Don't be afraid to reach out. People want to help. That's been really incredible. And ask for book recommendations.
All right. Well, that makes, I have a follow-up for you for book recommendations.
Yes. It's crazy. Some of the books that I read are somewhat professional, but a lot of them are just like, how do I grow personally? Because that's, again, I think 90% of being a founder is like just emotional and just taking care of yourself. It's like, on the plane, like with the mask on yourself, we put the plane on your child. It's like, for me, at least, I'm reading a book. We talked about the dinner. It's 4,000 Weeks Time Management for Mortals. Forgot the author, but he basically talks about, how you should spend your time.
Super dark title, by the way.
Super dark. Our life's 4,000 weeks is really the premise, but it actually translates to business, right? Because it's about how you prioritize. We have a ton of great ideas. We have a ton of ways to spend our time. We can basically spend our time whatever we want, but this idea of being really intentional about it is super important to me, and that's been really impactful for me recently.
Where do we learn?
I'll just where do we learn?
Where do we learn?
I'd like to plug Pavilion. Actually, for our world, I think it's been really impactful for myself and my team. I think they have some great courses around sales, SaaS, marketing, finance, financial modeling, leadership in those categories, leadership in general. I think I've been very impressed with their coursework. Shout out to Pavilion. I think when you are looking to get better, like a tennis player who's looking to get better, they don't play tennis with somebody who's as good or worse than them. They're seeking out other tennis players that are better than them. They're looking to go get beat. That's how they get better. And so if you find somebody who's very serious about tennis, they won't just play with your, like a weekend game with a friend who doesn't play, because they don't want to dampen their skill sets. They're looking, iron sharpens iron. And so you want to go out and find people that are willing to sharpen with you and work with you on that. And then book recommendations, I have to shout out How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. If you haven't read that and you are early in your career, especially, you need to go out and read that in a world where I think, Gen Z, I think, is more, they have a lot more awareness on social media and awareness of like how they're perceived in the world, but I don't think they do enough job of developing their EQ. And if you're looking for a way to develop your EQ and kind of understand, learn from people who've come before you on ways to work with people, there's really no better book to start with than How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Amazing. What company told you you had to read that? Which one along the journey?
I think it was the first job out of college.
My first
that's manager. An old one.
My first manager.
It's from the 30s or something.
I remember my first manager was just like, you need to work on your emotional intelligence. Like that was like the typical engineer, like product manager.
But the people who are recommending that book to us are all retired now. So we either have to keep recommending it to people, because there's nobody recommending that book. We have to keep recommending it, or people.
Amazing. So guys, where does somebody find you? I'm assuming LinkedIn. Where else?
LinkedIn, Delegate.team website. We've started to ramp up some of the content we're coming out with, spotlighting different people in the RevOps space, in the talent space. Obviously, there's some stuff on planning we're coming out with soon. So ICP work, so really cool stuff. We're ramping that up, and we'll be at Salesforce World Tour. We'll be at some events around the city this week. So come find us.
Where can we find you next year? Any events on the calendar?
Still working on it.
All right. Part of this time of the year.
Yeah.
You can find us at any Salesforce event with more than 500 people.
Yes.
We'll be there. We'll be there.
Yeah, that's fair.
You can find me at Patrick_Hudgins on Twitter, and you can find us at delegate.team. Submit a contact us form, and we'll get back to you.
Are the Run CRM shirts going to make it to next year? Were they a SaaSter only shirt?
We might bring them back. You want to bring it back? Control. They're like Jordans. You have to control the
inventory on the market.
Yeah, 100%.
If you like something that Rob did, he will not do it again.
No,
Absolutely.
it's a one-time only thing. Guys, thank you so much. I appreciate your patience. Anyone out there, if you're still listening, I apologize for the echoing. Thank you. This was a cool, fun episode of Revenue Talent Talk. I'm your host, Chris Gannon, founder of Captivate Talent, and thanks again for joining us. And Jay hopefully didn't fall asleep on the other end.